All right, I'm Ronnie Hayes, and we're going to break down the main purpose of the wolves in The Last of Us Part 2. Now, this is something that kind of came out of a conversation I've seen happening online where people are kind of wondering what's the purpose of the wolves or the scars. I see that going all around all over the place. Now, we're not breaking down the history and explaining in the story or the lore of what they're doing here. Essentially, they were a group that took over a quarantine zone, and when the Fireflies when Joel wreaked havoc through the Fireflies, they disbanded, and a lot of the Fireflies were absorbed into the Wolves, which is the WLF. Now, if we break this down, I just did this with Jesse. I'm thinking if I can keep these short and not ramble. I rambled a little for the Jesse video. I'm thinking maybe I can just do some short vids, pop them up on my channel, and we can have a little more discussion. I find this interesting. If you missed the Jesse one, this is for fans, but also especially people who are interested in kind of like a creative practice to see how writers incorporate characters and what their main purpose is. I'm not talking about all the extra fluff that you sprinkle around, like building character, making connections, quippy little one-lines to kind of make you love or hate certain characters. We're talking what's their definitive purpose in the game that moves the story in one direction or the other. Now, the Wolves, because of it being a video game, have a couple main purposes. Now, one of the main ones, obviously, for the gameplay is to have an enemy that you fight. Obviously, with The Last of Us, you need human enemies and then you need infected enemies. Well, them being in the game is simply to have a human enemy. Now, and I would argue more important reason for them doesn't even have to do with Ellie, the main character, or even Joel, the other supposed to be main character. But it doesn't have to do with either of them. Story-wise, it actually has to do with Abby. It explains where she went, and more importantly, it needs to explain her look. And that is huge. Now, I did criticize The Last of Us 2 for being ridiculous about how Abby looks. Not in how she looks, but in how they don't even mention it. They even kind of contradict themselves where she goes to get food, and they're like, oh, what's for lunch? Oh, burritos. Burritos again, and they give her like one burrito. Man, listen, this chick, the girl who was the body model for her, is not eating like they were eating in the video game, all right? She is doing protein shakes, maybe some roids here and there, you know what I mean? Like, she's getting it in. Now, the reason I say that for Abby is she wasn't training for 10, 12 years. I don't know how long the girl who did the body model for her is, but I have a couple friends that are actually into strength training and powerlifting and bodybuilding, and some of them are going 6, 7, 8 years. I talked about it on my stream. One of them is actually a female. I haven't spoken to her for a while, but it was several years she was going at it. Abby was only going at it for a couple years, and we know this because we see it in the flashback. She did not pack on the muscle to be muscular. She packed on the muscle, and this is going to relate to the wolves in a second, but she packed on the muscle to get revenge on Joel. She took advantage of the training from the WLF. There's even a specific scene that mentions it where she wants Owen to come back and go to training. And this criticism still stands because Abby, having that type of physique, needs her workout to be a daily part of her routine. It would be a part of her life. Now, I think it's an easy one to kind of wave away because her goal was to, get revenge on Joel and be physically ready to handle that at any point in time. That's why she put on the muscle. Now, since that was done, she got her revenge. All we needed was a couple lines, like her, going to get up to do her weightlifting routine and just realizing subtly, I don't have to put in that work like I used to anymore. But anyway, we're not here to critique the game. We are here to say the Wolves needed to be structured, organized, and they needed resources to explain and make sense of the physical look of the other villain slash protagonist, which is Abby. So that would be one of their main purposes as far as, let's say, purpose A, because purpose A goes with purpose B, and that has to deal with the wolves. So the wolves, an enemy to kill in the game, making it fun. Purpose A, as far as the storyline, is to explain and establish Abby's training, her muscular physique. But to go with that, the main purpose for the wolves, connecting to it, would be purpose B, the betrayal. When Isaac comes out of the woods and Abby has the scar behind her back and she wants to protect the scar, and he's like, move away, and then there's that gunfight. From that point on, she even says, you're my people, to the scar, and she turns her back. You can say it's a betrayal from the wolves to Abby, but only a few of them did that betrayal, if you think about it, in the woods. And that's where my other criticism from the game comes, because it tries to be real artsy with emotions. And I feel like if you have a lot of life experience, the game kind of falls a little flat in that respect, because at the end of the day, it is just a video game. You know what I mean? You don't take it so much to heart. If it was real life and you knew these characters in real life, you'd probably have a more emotional punch in the gut because you knew them both, you like them both, you're rooting for them both. But because it's a video game, you're looking at one and you're just like, you know what? You're here. Because you're here, my favorite character can't be here. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have this animosity. So I think, in that regards, it doesn't work on the emotional level. But as far as my other criticism, she immediately turns around and starts killing wolves, which are people that she has been friends with, she has been living with, she's been protecting. People in the wolves, they've been saving her life most likely when they're fighting the scars and yada yada yada. She immediately goes, and because we're the game player, and this is where it kind of falls apart a little, I murdered every single wolf I came across. I mean, I didn't even hesitate. When I was going through the wolves in the Scar Island, I was butchering anybody in my way. A wolf, a scar, didn't friggin' matter. Butchered them all in my way. Now, the reason this plays into part B is because Abby cannot have her home and do the ending that they did. So they needed to set up the wolves as the explanation for Abby, but also they needed to set up, and keep in mind, it explains how she found out about Joel and Tommy as well, because she's connected with the wolves. Fireflies from from Jackson showed up and gave her a lead. So you can add that to it. It explains her body. It gives her the lead for Joel. And then at the end of the game, she can't have this family, these friends, these comrades. She can't have that support system in place. So what do? The betrayal. They all betray each other. Abby now fights the wolves, and the wolves and Scars are, having this crazy battle where many are going to die. But essentially, Abby is no longer welcome. She's probably now on their hit list. She is wanted at the end of the game. And that kind of plays into part of Abby's purpose, because, believe it or not, part of Abby's purpose does mirror Joel's purpose in part 1. So being wanted at the end kind of relates to that. But we'll cover that when we cover Abby and Lev as far as their purposes for the characters. But yeah, the wolves, their main purpose is to be a character to kill, both for Ellie in the beginning and, believe it or not, Abby, betraying him and killing him in the end, but also to establish her physique, her physical look, her getting the lead, the information easily from other Fireflies that got picked up at the wall, she says. And then the end, you need the betrayal and the fight against the wolves, not being welcome there, probably getting locked up, killed, or even tortured if she stayed or went back to them, and kind of her path of redemption. And that pushed her story out and away. And if you played the game, it sent them to Santa Barbara. I'm not going to cover that because that is pretty much where the purpose of the wolves ends as far as that. So they have a little more purpose than Jesse. Jesse was an easy one. He was wham bam, thank you ma'am. He was just a sperm donor essentially, and then not essentially, that was it. That's his only purpose. But the wolves have kind of more of a intertwined purpose throughout the story. So there you go. You guys maybe pick up on a couple little small moments. And again, they have to be moments that push the story, not just little moments that kind of set up exposition or something like that. They have to be pushing the story. Her physique, finding out about Joel, that is huge. That kicks this off as far as this game. And then obviously the end pushes her away. And then it leads her to her fate. Anyway, thoughts and opinions down below. I'm done talking. It's your turn.